Welcome to the Contrarian Capitalist podcast. I'm delighted to be joined today by returning guest Rudy Havenstein, who is, of course, the author of the very popular A Havenstein Moment on Substack. I highly recommend you go and give that a follow and a subscribe. Today's episode is a very open Q&A. So we've got some subscriber questions that we're going to ask, and then we will the conversation will flow through wherever it goes. So it could be we might touch on markets. We'll try not to, but we might look at commodities as well. I think last time we dug into Rudy's favorite gig, so it's going to be that sort of podcast, something a bit off the beaten track for the Contrarian Capitalist. Rudy, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Well, we'll get cracking, and some readers that sent in their questions asked not to be named, so there's going to be some anonymous
Oh, sure.
questions here, and that's understandable. So these are in no particular order either. I'm just dishing them out as and when we can. And the first question here is from Jimmy. He says, "Is the system broken by design, or did it just drift this way?"
Yeah, that's a good question. I think about that a lot over the years. A lot of times the things that happen, not just in monetary policy, but foreign policy, are so disastrous. You almost wonder if it was intentional. I don't know. I mean, a lot of smart people think that the guys at the Fed are mean well. Um, But they're not stupid people, and they see the same things I see, and this massive growth in wealth disparity, largely as a result of Fed policies. And I can't believe that they're not aware that what they are doing is causing this in large part. And I don't know, but some of the things they say and post, on the other hand, makes me think they're really totally clueless people. I mean, like they certainly live in a bubble. Um, Mark Faber makes a great point. He was talking to someone, I think at Bloomberg or somewhere, where he's saying, middle class people or poor people are suffering, but they're never on Bloomberg. They're never on CNBC. They're never interviewed. Powell never runs into anybody probably who's struggling to pay for rent or food. He's
Hmm.
surrounded by very well paid apparatchiks who have an ideology that's about 95% identical at the Fed. They're all believe that, more intervention and more money printing is the way to go. I like to joke that they want to hyperinflate. They just want to do it very, very slowly. And they think they're so much smarter than the central bankers of Germany in 1923. Um, I don't know. I guess if a gun to head, if someone said, do you think they're evil or just incompetent? I mean, I think they're kind of clueless. I think they probably live. It's cognitive dissonance. They think they're doing good, but and so they just don't want to recognize that their actions are really hurting the vast majority of Americans. But who are their actions helping? Well, guys like Ken Griffin, guys like Larry Fink. Well, gee, where did Ben Bernanke go for his many many millions of reward after he left the Fed? He went to Citadel. Where did Fisher, Stan Fisher go after he left the Fed? He went to BlackRock.
Hmm.
And BlackRock, of all companies, probably has been the biggest beneficiary of the Fed's bad monetary policy. So when you look, Yellen's now at PIMCO. They all go to PIMCO. Kashkari went to PIMCO. Greenspan went to PIMCO. Bernanke and Yellen are at PIMCO. I joke that, Occupy Wall Street it applies to central bankers. They're the ones that occupy Wall Street, either before or after they go to the Fed. Look at a guy like Bill Dudley. He was at Goldman Sachs for 20 years, and then he went to the Fed and screwed things up, and then he went back to Goldman. Clarita and Kaplan, they do the same thing. So it's a revolving door. These people are not in touch with 98% of the population. They're surrounded by people like, I mean, I'm sure when they do get out of their Fed box, they go and talk to David Zervos and Paul McCulley and Rick Reeder. And what do those guys say? We need bad monetary policy. So, I mean, bad for most of the country, great for them, wonderful monetary policy for them. So, yeah, I think, God, it's tough. I think they're a little of both. I mean, as to make a mealy Weasley answer, I think that they are. I think that I think that they're bad people in that they have to know deep down that what they're doing is hurting most Americans, but somehow they justify it. And I guess they're all going to be fine. They're all quite comfortable. I hear Bernanke makes 20 million a year.
Yeah.
So he's doing great no matter what happens as a result of his failed policies. And then again, we want to, if I had two words I could say for every podcast is no accountability, ever for these guys ever. So, and
Okay.
most Americans are paying for it. I'll mention this too. I just, Trump sent out a thing today, all time highs, 7,000. America is so back. Well, yesterday, the consumer sentiment numbers came out and they were the worst since 2014. So clearly most of America isn't joyed by record high SPX.
Yeah,
So
there's a
I hope that kind of gives my views on that for Jimmy.
no, that's great, and thanks for that, and thanks, James. That's a hell of a question to start off. I must admit. Just on that, really, and this one's for me 'cause this is something I've just thought about then. So, given everything we've just said, and you've mentioned 7,000 and the disparity there, do you think then that the biggest risk moving forwards is economic or psychological?
You know, I sometimes wonder if the tactics from whoever's running the show, the CIA or whatever, is to make people despair and kind of give up. Americans are kind of a passive group anyway. Um, I think a lot of Americans are already in an economic crisis, and I think a lot of them have been, since 2008, basically. There's even Kevin Warsh said years ago that half of America, their only income is like W-2 income,
Mhm.
or whatever they earn in the black market. They don't have any. They own nothing. They own no stocks. They own no house. Um, they don't really own any assets, and those people are getting left behind. And 10% of the population owns supposedly like 93% of the stocks. And so, and then the other 40% between those two extremes, most of these people own a trivial amount, certainly not enough to retire on. I mean, we're all kind of our view is distorted because we're looking online and we're looking at FinTwit and during the day. And who's on FinTwit during the day? People that probably have a good amount of money in the stock market. So you're going to get them talking their book. I like to say there's a bunch of small time Cantillon effect beneficiaries talking their book all day. So, which is fine. A lot of people are of the attitude that, hey, I'm getting mine, so screw everybody else. And I don't have that attitude. I mean, I'm doing fine under horrific Fed monetary policy, but it's not good for society. And I'd rather, my stocks be a little lower and have a functional society.
No, it's a good sentiment. I'm sure that there's going to be many people out there that resonate with that. So
I
thank
hope.
you. You hope.
I hope it resonates with I mean, I hope, like I said, on FinTwit, I'm generally going to see the people who are like, screw it, I'm making money. I don't care about anything else. I don't care I've heard people say, I don't care if it's a fraud. I'm making money off it. I tend to kind of just want to be against fraud, but yeah. So I hope some of what I'm saying resonates with people. I think a lot of it does. I mean, I think there's a lot more attention now on the Fed than when I started trying to educate people on Twitter in 2013, and had been doing years before with friends and emails. But yeah, there's a lot more people now, I think, that recognize the Fed, but it's still a minority, a tiny minority. Most people on the street probably would have no idea who's the Fed chair or even what the Fed is. And that's true today still. But I think the number that do recognize their role in the kleptocracy is growing. Still a small number, but you don't need huge numbers if you got people out there spreading the word. So, and Ron Paul, he's still around. He's 80. God, he's 88 or something. I
Mhm.
mean, that's the guy's been right on and monetary policy for my entire life. So got to give that guy credit. He's still out there fighting and educating people.
Good on him as well for doing that. Again, it's one of the joys of being able to, do this podcast and run this channel, just like the excellent work you do as well. I like to think that we're here to try and educate, try and help, and try and serve other people. That's the way I look at it. That's why, every day doing this is an absolute
Yeah,
pleasure.
it started years ago, like in the 90s or 2000s when, like after the dot-com crash, and I was trying to, explain to people what kind of had happened there and the lack of regulation and the fraud And these are, I was talking to very educated, successful people who had no idea what was going on because they're too busy. They're too busy. And I've been fortunate in recent years to have the time to, look into it. And so, yeah, I view it as what I do as like a third career. It's like an education, uh, uh, educate people and also to make them laugh. Because I really try to do that because a lot of the stuff is kind of a downer. And so when I don't want
Mm.
people to be down, people think, oh, are you, hey, cheer up or something. Like, man, I'm always cheerful. I could, this stuff slides off me because what's important, much more important is your own personal life. And, but I do think what's been going on, geez, for a lot, decades now is not good for this country. And there's a few people that are benefiting and there's a vast majority that aren't. And that kind of bothers me. And I care about the country. And so that's why I speak out on it. And also one other thing that's rarely discussed is for me, Twitter is like, an artistic outlet too. I do a lot of, just kind of things pop into my head and I put them out there for better or worse. And some people like it and some people don't. So, but yeah, creative outlet, kind of fun.
It definitely is. Yeah. But I think it's also important nowadays that we can all agree to disagree on things.
Yes, yes.
Regardless of what that is. That's I think people need to get better at that, myself included, to be honest. Um,
Yeah, it's a lost art. Yeah, but I've always tried to be like that. Unless you run into someone that's just completely unreasonable, and I'll get a lot of replies, especially lately. I think the algo changed from non-followers, people who probably the first time they ever see me, and they didn't like what I said, and they'll just start screaming obscenities at me. And someone like that, I'm not going to try and talk to. I'm just like, okay, buddy, at best you're muted, and if you're really nasty, you get blocked. Or sometimes you just some non-follower comes after, makes some smart ass remark to me, and other days I might just laugh it off and reply something funny to him. But some days, like today, that I blocked a guy, just insta block, because he just ticked me off, and it's like, okay, I don't need this. I got plenty of nice people like you that I can talk to,
mm.
and I don't need to waste time on idiots. And there's a lot of idiots, but there's also a lot of good people out there too, and we forget that because the idiots get all the attention generally.
Well, I'm honored to be on the good step, Rudy. So thank
Yeah,
you
you're
for
you're a
that.
very nice person.
Thank you. I will move on to the next question. This is from Pete, and he said, keeping actually on the theme that we were just talking about, that what's the hardest truth people avoid about the current system?
Well, for me, it's been realizing that the United States, because I'm an American, it does a lot of evil things in the world,
Mhm.
and apparently, in many cases, intentionally. And that's someone say, "Oh, it's always done." I know. I would get these replies like, "What are you naive?" Or you say, "No," but I mean, just it's really, yeah, that's kind of hard to take, is when you realize, that as I say, we've spent most of this century killing people in countries most Americans couldn't find on a map. I think the Iraq War was probably the greatest disaster, one of the greatest disasters in American history. And yet all the same people are still around advising us on foreign policy. It's pretty
Well,
disgusting.
yeah.
So, and then of course, to see Trump cover up the Wexner Maxwell Epstein operation is, to me, that's just repulsive, especially since he was so close to this guy for so many years by his own
Mm.
admission. So to me, that's a huge red flag waving that these guys prioritize really bad criminals over justice and over right and wrong. I mean, there's no right and wrong to Donald Trump, and it's whatever he feels like at the time. So it makes you wonder, I mean, who hangs out with Jeff Epstein for 15 years and parties with him? Someone who doesn't mind hanging out with a guy that is, with 14-year-olds. So, um, yeah, it's that's so for yes, for me, that's the worst thing, is realizing that there's a lot of evil done on my behalf or in my name, in America's name. There's a song by the band X, which is one of my favorite bands, and they have a song called "I Must Not Think Bad Thoughts," and it's all about kind of what I'm talking about here. So go check that out, people, if you're interested.
Okay, well, again, thank you for that. I say it's, but there's a lot of cold hard truths out there. So thank you for diving into that one. I'm just going to take one more question. I'll go to a couple of comments that we had on
Sure,
X, but I'll do more
sure.
one more question for what I can see in front of me. This one
Yeah.
is from this is a good one actually. This one's from Rebecca. She says, "Do you think the internet is waking people up or exhausting them into compliance?"
Yes. Yeah, a little bit, a lot of both. I mean, I see, yeah, like I said, I think in my own case, in my own experience, there's a lot more people now that understand because of things the people like me have been posting for years, and showing. Although there's not many people like me, to be honest with you. I've yet to find an account that's like mine. But yeah, yeah. What was it? Can you repeat the question for me just a second? Because there was two parts or two options.
Yeah, of course. So do you think the internet is waking people up or
Oh,
exhausting
yeah,
them
yeah,
into
yeah.
compliance?
Okay. Yeah, so I mentioned the good part first. Okay, now to the bad part. Yeah, the algos are just insane. I mean, as I was going through X, they have the for you tab, and as opposed to the following. And there was a time recently when it was nothing but, I called it state propaganda. I mean, it was nothing but Trump tweets, Ted Cruz tweets, Marco Rubio tweets. And so I just started actually muting or blocking a lot of these very, prominent accounts just because I was tired of seeing them. I think the algo, I don't know, maybe it learned that I didn't like that. And so now it's giving me more stuff, that I like. I said years ago, I wish there was an option on X to like instead of for you and following, it's like opposite day. Like show me all the posts from people that you think I would probably disagree with. And because I like seeing what other people are posting. And I so yeah, the bots are crazy. I've been getting like yesterday out of the blue, I get a half dozen almost exactly the same replies to some, econ tweet. And
Mhm.
they were all like, yes, the Fed is balancing, between deciding on, this or that. I mean, they were all worded the same. They're all clearly bots and they're all non-followers and they all just popped up, and so I just block all those guys. But yeah, I'd heard that Elon actively encourages bots because it makes his advertising numbers look better. So I don't, we go through phases. We had a few months ago, you had the bots that were like crypto bots or whatever. Just, oh God, it
Mhm.
was just hundreds of them. And and I blocked every one of them. But those seem to have gone away. And now we're getting sort of like, oh, he's talking about economics. Well, let's send a bot with an economics tweet, it's like a reply. So I don't know what the point is. I mean, I guess they want me to engage with the bot, and then that's better for Twitter's advertising metrics or something. And God knows I probably have interacted with a bot once or twice. I have no, I generally can spot them, but it's getting hard. You got to wonder about everything now with the AI, and they can reproduce your
Mhm.
voice and they can reproduce your image, and it's pretty crazy. So I don't know where that's going to go. But yeah, I think well, I've said this for years, even before AI and all that. They whether you're watching Fox or MSNBC or whether you're reading, some left-wing Twitter account or some right-wing Twitter account, they all want to push your buttons, and they
Mhm.
all want to get you. If you're a website, you want clicks. You don't care if they're clicks from people who love what you're writing or people who hate what you're writing. They just want clicks. So, that's why you get a lot of headlines, on MSNBC or something will be like, Trump kills babies, years ago. And then, people would be all, then the right wing guys would have, Biden kills babies. And then everyone would click on that. So you got to be aware of that. I try to not be baited. There's a great GIF of, from one of the Mad Max movies where the guy is driving a car and he points up and he goes, "That's bait." You've probably seen it anyway. And so sometimes when I see a tweet especially if it's one that's a real one that's like directed to me, I just go with "that's bait." Yeah, try not to be baited. Recognize that they're trying to get you either riled up, yay, or riled up angry. And
Mhm.
that's not good. So I think some people like me can read all this garbage and then kind of try to not go insane. But there's a lot of very, I don't know, very kind of weak-minded people out there who are easily manipulated and who do go insane. And I'm reading a book right now about MK Ultra, and that was the goal of the CIA since the 40s and 50s mind control, and if I imagine they're pretty good at it by now, after 70 years.
Yes, they probably are, to say
Yeah.
the least. Okay, so we've got a mixture then. So we've got the internet is waking people up, but it is also at the same time
Yeah, it's
exhausting them with the
it's
compliance.
it's great. There's a lot of chaff, but there's some wheat in there, So
Mm.
yeah, like Reddit. Reddit's a garbage fire, but I get a lot of cool stuff off of Reddit because when I see the garbage, it just slides off me. But like I was saying, there's a lot of people. I don't think this goes back to things I've talked about before about how kids grow up nowadays versus back in the day.
Mm.
Like a lot of people don't have the intellectual training, I guess, from life experience to be able to differentiate between garbage and non-garbage. So parents need to teach the kids that, and I think sometimes the garbage is what they're being taught in school nowadays, but you have to be able to kind of just sit there and reject it, even if you got to regurgitate it, so I feel bad for some of these college students that have to take these, DEI classes, and talk about how horrible white men are,
Mm.
and that kind of thing. You're an engineering major and you're forced to take a unit of this, sensitivity training or something. It's just, I don't know. You need kids to be able to grow up and learn to differentiate between wheat and chaff. And I don't think a lot of kids can differentiate nowadays. A lot can. We just notice the ones that can't. They're the ones on social media ranting and raving. They're the ones out in this street causing problems of in many situations. We don't see the good people. We see the knuckleheads.
Yeah, I think that sort of works hand in hand with the uh, dare I say, narrative or bigger powers that are driving, as you sort of highlighted there, driving certain stories and ideas. And of course, if you get into any algorithm, I mean, I could do the same on X. I could look through and there's people talking Bitcoin or gold or, 'cause I like sports as well. And I get rolled up by people that are, commenting daft things about sports. And,
Sure.
I'm not perfect, but I understand what you're saying. When you've got bigger forces at play and it then goes in with the algorithms, that could spell, disaster, for some people.
Yeah, I think they're working on not only actively controlling people, but now they can do it digitally. But they're
Mm.
also doing it physically too, I think. I mean, just look up. I mean, people say, what is this? Look up MK Ultra, and there's a bunch of books on it and stuff. You can read about what the CIA was doing. And Whitney Webb has a great quote where she says, if you tell people that the CIA did bad things in the 50s, they'll say, oh, yeah, that was terrible. But if you tell them the CIA did bad things 3 years ago, they'll say, oh, what are you talking about, you conspiracy theorists? I mean, what makes you think that goes back to my comment about the government being evil? I mean, actually doing evil things and like covering up, child trafficking network. I think that that's what they do. And a lot of people just want to, cover their ears and close their eyes and say, no, 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 that's conspiracy theory. That could never happen. Our government would never do that. Well, I got to tell you, our government does do it. Okay. And you can pretend they don't. And maybe that's lets you sleep better at night. But yeah, we do a lot. We do a lot of good, but we do a tremendous amount of damage. Not only to our own people, I think, but also to the world unnecessarily. I'm not a pacifist, but come on. What do we do? We bombed Somalia 100 times last year. You know, we have a constitution which Trump apparently just doesn't believe in at all. I mean, look at his ridiculous Second Amendment comments the other day. Um, we have a provision in the Constitution where, if we're going to go to war with somebody, Congress debates it and then they vote on it. I mean, it's Congress. I mean, the problem we have is we have a completely AWOL or I don't know, submissive Congress. They don't recognize that they're a branch of government. Instead, the Fed's the branch of government. Congress has abdicated to the Fed, and the Fed is basically Congress's drug dealer. So really, Congress is, you know, kind of useless. They've given all power to the executive and to the Fed. And this started. I was talking about this when Bush was president, and Cheney, and they took. The Constitution was trashed back then after 9/11, and of course the drug war has trashed this Constitution forever. I mean, how's that going? Are people not using drugs anymore? It's ridiculous. So anyway, yeah.
That's a hell of a food chain you've just laid out for sure, there, Rudy. I'll give you that.
Oh yeah.
I'll move over to X, and these might be comments. I wasn't quite sure really how to take these, but I'll read these out anyway, and we can go with them as you feel. So I had a
Oh, I'm used to reading random comments from people, so this is fine.
Perfect. So this one's a meme from Duke over on X, and it is. I won't try and explain the meme, but it basically you've got a little doll, I think, that says COVFEFE, so coffee, and then someone saying the secret word is. I don't know if we're going to take anything away from that, but I don't know if you can make
No,
any sense of that at all, Rudy.
I sometimes I just don't get it. So yeah, no, I don't understand what that would mean. But I mean, Covfefe was supposedly that typo from Trump in his first administration. But yeah, that's all I know about that.
Okay, no problem at all. And sorry if you just heard music in the background, so I was just trying to get the full title to this video. And we had Bubo Asper reply with a link to a video which is called Davos Establishment Can't Face the Truth, Live in a World of Fractured Fairy Tales. I mean, that's not really a question, but it's a very good link to a good video. I've had a brief look through it.
Yeah,
I guess.
I saw that, but I didn't look at the video. I almost never watch videos, to be honest with you. I don't know if I told you before. I just listen. I convert them to
Hmm,
MP3 if I have to, and I listen when I go on long walks. So, yeah, I mean Davos. I've been making fun of Davos for 13 years now.
mhm.
On Twitter. It's everything that's wrong with the world is represented in Davos, and I think it was quite fitting for Trump to be there, actually. So I think
Perfect.
he's part of that group.
Any other? I'm just scrolling through my X now just to make sure I've missed anything out. No, I haven't. I'll go back to these other questions. Again, just scrolling through. Let's. I'll tell you what. Whilst I scroll for an even better question, I know that last time you mentioned your favorite gig, and that was an AC/DC concert.
Oh
You've
yeah.
just mentioned one of your favorite bands, so I'll ask you this one. Who is actually your favorite band?
Well, I guess if I had to pick one, it would be AC/DC, but
Mhm.
that's AC/DC with Bon Scott. So because for me, it's a completely different band since 1980. I still refer to Brian Johnson as the new singer. That's how that was 45 years. Um, and I got nothing against Brian Johnson. In fact, I saw him last April at the Rose Bowl. I saw the band, but it was nothing like the '79 incarnation. I mean, for me, that was just peak band. That's a different band as far as I'm concerned. It was AC/DC one and AC/DC two. Um, Other bands, I was always well, back in the day, when I was a teenager, I was in a punk band, and but I was also a huge like AC/DC and Led Zeppelin fan. I mean, probably my two favorite bands were AC/DC, Led Zeppelin,
Mhm.
but I was also really into like Black Flag and the Sex Pistols and Dead Kennedys and all
Mhm.
those the Ramones, back then. And so so I had long hair, and I'd be in the band. I played guitar, and there'd be most of the punks would shave their heads back then, and I was like, and they say, "Why you got to cut your hair? You got to cut your hair." And I said, "Well, you got isn't punk rock about being different?" And so you guys are showing that you're different by all shaving your head, So that was kind of my attitude. So I was like a punk with long hair, which is kind of what the Cult, another band I really like. One of the guys in that band said that that's what they are. They're punks with long hair, and so that's kind of what I was. But yeah, big Led Zeppelin fan. I still listen to Led Zeppelin on occasion. As a kid, little kid, I was a huge Beatles fan.
Mhm.
Um, and but I find that I don't listen to the Beatles much at all anymore. But I mean, I'll still listen to Creedence or Led Zeppelin. Generally hard rock kind of stuff, like early AC/DC. But then about 25 years ago, I think I started listening to like what you would call like chill stuff, trip hop. I really got into like Portishead and
Mhm.
more Chiba and bands like that. And so that totally, rather than always headbanging kind of stuff, I kind of delved off into into more, sometimes you want to just relax music. And I was a huge Zero 07 fan. I mean, I would say that was probably one of my most influential albums of the last 30 years was their debut. And then, I've really got a lot of jazz and blues, especially early blues, and
Mhm.
or electric. I love like Hound Dog Taylor, or, Lightning Hopkins, or guys like that. So I'm pretty much all over the map. I like a lot of new wave stuff that I was a big Elvis Costello fan back, right? I remember bringing his album home right when it first came out. What was that? My Aim Is True. Was that his first one? I put it on the turntable, and I put the needle down, and I was playing it for my friend who was a big punk rocker at the time, and he didn't like it. And I was like, "This guy's great. This Elvis is great." And he's like, "No," and he didn't like it. But then within a year or so, he was like going to see Elvis Costello. He was a huge fan. So, I think it's good not to get pigeonholed into a genre. Just like it's good to not get pigeonholed into D versus R, red versus blue,
Mhm. Mhm.
a lot of people identify themselves as, I'm a metalhead, or I don't know, I like hip hop, but some of my favorite things are seeing when people who are consider themselves one genre are exposed to another genre. Like they have videos like this on YouTube, and they kind of go, wow, one of the funniest things that ever happened is I'm getting a cab with a buddy in Montreal, and we're going
Mhm.
to the airport, and this black guy who total Rastafarian, I mean, the hair, the outfit, everything, is
Mhm.
our Uber driver. So we're going with him to the airport, and my buddy is like a big old time cowboy, like old school, like 1950s cowboy music,
Mhm.
country
Mhm.
music. And so what does this Rastafarian guy start playing on his car? He starts playing these obscure 1950s country songs that only like my friend knows about. I mean, he plays
Mhm.
them, but nobody else plays these old. So these are old country songs. And so my friend starts talking to this guy and goes, "Wait, that's. I mean, I don't know who these bands are. That's so and so." And they connected. They totally connected. And it was. I'm sitting in the back, and they were in the front, and I'm like, I just got such a kick out of watching these two. You would never think that they would connect on something. They're so different guys, cowboy and a Rastafarian, and I mean
Mhm.
old school cowboy. And yet on the music, they were like best friends suddenly. And I think we would have wished the car ride went on a lot longer. So that was something, kind of thing that I like to see is, people discovering new music. And that's what I tried to do with when I got into like Zero 07 and all that, because I still love, the heart, the rock, and but I'm open to all sorts of different genres. So that's I don't know, just rambling here, but yeah, that's AC/DC was probably, if I had to name one, would be the band or with Bon Scott.
No, that's perfect. And yeah, no need to apologise for ramblings. It is a complete open Q&A session. I just thought I'd ask you because we discussed your favourite
Oh,
gig
sure.
last
And I always
time.
come
So
unprepared. Yeah. So
yeah, that's exactly how it should be. Back to a couple of questions here. Really got one from Laura who says, has spending years thinking about money and power changed how you see people?
it's changed how I see elected officials
Okay.
and governmental officials and bureaucrats. Yeah. Your man on the street or friends? No. No, although it is sad to see friends, mutual friends, break up, they fall apart over political differences, which goes back to being able to disagree with someone and, go have a beer or a cup of coffee with them.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I absolutely look very jaded eye on any public official from any country. I think that their job largely is to lie to us. I mean, Mike Pompeo, I got a video I posted where Mike Pompeo just says, I think he's at the military academy, and he's talking to the cadets, and he says, "You guys are not supposed to lie, cheat, or steal." He goes, "Heck," and he's very jovial about, "Heck, I was head of the CIA. We lie, we cheat, we steal," and he's bragging about it. So,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, I definitely have a jaded eye towards the people in power.
Okay, yeah, no, fair enough. That's completely understandable. Just flying through these questions now. This one is from Jake, and this is quite a good one actually. I do like this one. If you had to explain gold to a child, how would you do it?
I have an explanation for that. I don't know if it's well, for if the child's a little older. Gold is a handgun that you keep in a drawer and hope you never need.
Mhm.
That's my favorite. I made that up, so I've that's one of my originals. Yeah. It for me, it's insurance. I mean, I don't trade gold. It's money. Um, and yeah, it's for me, gold is money. Goes back to J.P. Morgan, the original one, who said that, nothing else. It's just gold. And I think, thousands of years track record. And of course, we're seeing it now. I mean, I had mentioned on some podcasts that I'd kind of, closed some trades on gold stuff, around like 3,800 or something because I thought, okay, it's overdone. It's going to have a big correction. Then I'll get back in. But man, then it just took off $1,000 and, or now it's 1,500. I mean, it's at 53. So I did get back in with some money and I just was buying every day. And that was like $500 ago, and so I do have a trading position again, and I've got a core position that I never sell ever. But yeah, it's amazing. I'm looking at the screen right now, 53.17. What is that saying? I don't know. It's
Mm.
kind of like, we had some run-ups in the past like this that were parabolic. And of course, I'm the first one to know, I've been around long enough that, parabolic moves generally end very badly.
Mhm.
But I don't know if this is like a paradigm shift, or is this just like some sort of supply demand temporary situation related to tariffs or God knows what, or I don't know. I wonder how much gold was rehypothecated over the years, loaned out. Um, that was always a theory I had. Of course, I'm certainly no expert on how the gold markets work, but you wonder you had, a John Corzine kind of situation where you've got we're lending out gold to the same gold to different people, perhaps. Maybe
Mhm.
is that possible? I don't know. Everything was paper for so long. I wonder if now we're having more and more people just say, you know what, send me the gold. And with silver, I'm sure the same thing's happening too. I mean, if you're a billionaire, I think there's stories. I haven't read them, but I think I saw a story or two about a billionaire who's buying just some ungodly amount of silver or something, going to put it in a vault in his, somewhere. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's that much gold, physical gold around. I guess there is at the right price. People will come in and start melting down their wedding rings or something. But I don't know. I'm tempted, because it is a parabolic move. But then again, I look back at monetary policy, global monetary policy, where every central bank on earth went insane in the last 20 years. And I think, well, maybe this is gold just catching up to the insanity because for so long it just was, around $1,000 or $2,000, and it seems like you look at the money supply growth and over the years and the size of the stock market, size of everything else, gold really hadn't had a move to match that, and now it seems like it's catching up. So I don't know. I mean, I'm still a little surprised we haven't had, a 15% down day or something like that. But this time might be different. It does happen on occasion, when it really is something different, a paradigm. And if people decide, a lot of people probably are deciding, I think, as I mentioned before, a huge mistake was confiscating the Russian gold because that made
Mm.
everybody I mean,
Mhm.
Russian T-bills
Yeah.
because that made everybody on Earth go, "Whoa, okay, okay, we see how this game is played. We can't trust the U.S. government." Now, if I assume, I don't know why it would take them so long to understand that, but yeah, when you only confiscated the gold, I keep saying gold, the treasuries, I think that was
Mhm.
sent a message to China and India and Saudi Arabia and Arab states, everybody with any money. Um, you can't keep it in U.S. custody. So, I see Germany. It was a headline the other day. Somebody in Germany is calling for the repatriation of all their gold. I thought they did that like 10 years ago. What, they never got all their gold back? I don't understand. Or they only asked for part of it. I mean, I would, if I'm Germany, I don't blame them. I wouldn't want my gold sitting in, you know, wherever it is in Bank of New York. And how's that Fort Knox audit going? I heard somebody out. There was a guy yesterday on a podcast I was listening to, and he was like, somebody brought up Fort Knox or something, and he's like, "Oh, and if you talk about auditing it or whatever, you're full of nonsense. You don't know anything." And it was conspiracy theory. Whereas I don't think saying, "Hey, it hasn't been audited in 70 years. Maybe there should be an audit." And as others like okay, Johnson, uh, who knows the gold market very well, John Johnson. explains an audit of Fort Knox is not something you go in and do in a weekend. If it would take months because you have to test, you can't just assume that it's not tungsten or something. I don't think, maybe if
Mm.
it's a bar that's hasn't, there's dust on it since 1940, okay. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know that we even have the gold. And some people would say, well, does it even matter? We'll just, everything now is so fake, maybe just say we got the gold, I don't know. I keep the estimates of Chinese gold holdings are all over the map, I mean, yeah, magnitudes difference between one guy and another. Um, so I don't know. I have, my handgun in the drawer, and I hope I don't need it, and I'm not selling it, and so yeah, it's a long answer to what gold is. It's insurance for me. It's not an investment. It's money. It's yeah.
Well, you've touched on many a thing now, and I think the important word there is trust. And I was speaking to Paul Kiker of Kiker Wealth the other day, and he
Mm.
said a similar thing that the minute the US done that, as you've just said, that it changed the rules of the game and it changed that trust principle. And the minute they
Oh
done
yeah,
that, it might be one of those decisions at the time where people go, yeah, yeah, that's great. And apparently, feedback I've had on the podcast, I get told I pick on the Russians too much. I don't have a problem with Russia. I know that the
yeah,
British want you to think that the British have got a problem with Russia, and maybe the
yeah. I don't have
establishment does.
yeah,
I don't have a problem with
right.
them at
I don't
all.
have a problem with them either.
But it was more the minute that that happened. It might have been lauded at the time, but actually, as we're a couple of years down the line from that, and we
Right.
started, well, that trust has dissipated. We're now where we are. Goals at 5,000 plus, as you said, and actually, nothing's seriously broken. We can argue data all day long,
Yeah.
but the fact
Yeah.
that that's happening should be sending everyone a warning sign.
Oh, it is, but I don't think most Americans have any idea about gold at all and don't own any. I would think I did a survey the other day, and it's like, not that it's scientific, although I said it was. Um, it most Americans don't own any gold other than maybe some jewelry, and so they're completely out of the loop. There's the old Mark Dice videos where like you're walking down the street and he'll offer you like this half-ounce gold coin or this candy bar, and
Hmm.
Americans will take, generally a lot of them will take the candy bar. This was even when gold was 1,500 or something. They have no idea of the value of gold. Now I imagine people in India or China or Russia, have a much better understanding of gold than Jay Powell does, or that your average American does. It's certainly saved them over time, not only over recent history, but over centuries, I imagine. Um, so, there's 330 million Americans, and how many Indians are there? How many Chinese? And that's the thing, is it's parabolic, but as somebody said, if Chinese are showing up if a billion Chinese are showing up every day buying gold, the chart is kind of irrelevant at that point. I think Americans all look at everything from like a technical analysis, closed system kind of view. It seems like there's kind of a run on gold right now. Now, tomorrow, it could drop 25%, and then they'll be like, well, but I'd probably buy more if I saw it drop 25%, tomorrow. I've joked over the years whenever there was a big uh, plunge in gold. I mean, for the last 13 years. I'd say something like, "Oh, it looks like that 6,000 year bubble is finally over," or it looks like the Chinese just dumped all their gold, and of course, some people that don't understand humor, which there's a lot on Twitter, they'll come at me. What are you talking about? So, but yeah, it's fun to watch. I mean, I've been, it's kind of like you've been watching this. I mean, I've been a fan of gold since it was, $250 an ounce. Um, uh, I wish I would have bought more, but at the time. But no, I mean, but to see it this latest run up is very impressive, and it's sending a message. And I'm really trying to decide. I've been thinking a lot about it. What message is it sending? Is this just another, you know, is this just a parabolic spike that we're going to look, that's going to then crash, and then it'll take 10 years to surpass it again, or is this something different. And I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows. But billions of people want to own gold. Just not many in America yet.
And I find that fascinating. And again, it's not just yourself that said that. Speaking to most of the audience that listen to this are from the United States, I should add. And I appreciate
Yeah.
that most people listening to this are going to know about gold, silver, commodities.
Well,
That's
of
the
course.
purpose of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
channel.
You've yeah. Yeah.
But
Sure.
the general person
The
is.
general public, no, 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 no clue. Just like they have no clue about the Fed. They have no, they, that's another thing is I want, I talk about inflation probably more than anybody on Twitter. And the reason is first of all, how horrific it is for most people. Um, but also I want the right people to be blamed. See, right
Mhm.
now, I think a lot of America is hurting really bad, but most of these people don't know why. They don't understand why. Why can't they afford their rent? Why can't they afford food? Why? And I go back to people like the horrific policies of people like Ben Bernanke and Janet Yellen and Jay Powell, whose policies were designed to save hedge funds and to save Larry Fink and to spike asset prices, which was great, especially for the top 1% that own the vast majority of that own most assets, certainly most stocks, and then they go work for the same people, So that's why I keep trying to point out that that your enemy isn't your neighbor. Your enemy is the system that created this inflation. And of course, wars are extremely inflationary, and we've had nothing but wars basically my entire life. None of them declared, none of them constitutional. But yeah, war. Now they're talking about going to war with Iran again. I think President Trump, he was supposed to be the guy that wasn't going to start new wars. Well, here he is, and he wanted to start war with Iran back in his first administration too. Um, the neocons have been trying to fight Iran since 1979, and we all act as if Iran. Gee, why do they hate us? Well, maybe because we overthrew their president and put in a Shah that tortured them. And now people are talking about bringing back that same monarchy. So it's not about freedom. It's never about freedom or democracy. It's always about just raw power and
Mhm.
control.
That makes for a good headline, actually. I might use that for the title of this. To be fair, thank you for that.
Well, and you
Really,
know what? What happened to America First or MAGA?
mm,
I mean, there's a lot of people hurting. Look at those consumer sentiment numbers I mentioned. There's a lot going on. You can go to any major city in the United States and see tent cities and see fentanyl addicts and see mentally ill people that are totally untreated. And crime in many areas is very high. Nationally, I think it's doing okay, but in a lot of cities, you can't even go. They're like war zones, and but nothing's being done on that. Um, I think there's a lot to fix in America. We have infrastructure issues. We need power, electric power. And instead we're talking about bombing countries most Americans couldn't find on a map.
mm.
Um, it's just I don't I it's not good.
No, it's not. And I wonder, even when you said about bombing Somalia, then I must admit I wasn't even aware of that either. So, it's
That's just one. I think he's bombed like 8 countries in
mm,
his second presidency here. And then again, just so I reiterate, people say, "Well, what about Obama?" Obama, yeah, Obama. If you've never heard me before, I'm completely nonpartisan. I loathe both parties. I have no B versus R to me is a dead end. I left that train many years ago. The Iraq War for me was just beyond the pale, and the way Hurricane Katrina was handled was just for me another disaster that really upset me about the way things are done in America.
uh, completely understandable, really. Yeah, that is completely understandable. If it's okay, if you finish off this question, this is from Ross, and I think this is a good one.
Sure.
And it says, "What do you read or listen to that you strongly disagree with, but do so with respect?"
Oh, well, I mean, I listen to guys like Chris Hedges, who's a very, very, some would call him far left. I don't consider myself far left, although some people would argue with me on that. But so I disagree with him on some things, but I certainly agree with him on foreign policy and on civil rights. issues. Same thing. I use the example a lot of Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich. And Dennis Kucinich, I completely agree with him on things, especially things like my pin tweet, foreign policy and monetary policy and civil rights, and I'm sure there's a lot of probably social issues I may disagree with
Hmm.
someone like Kucinich on. But when I find guys like Chris Hedges, I don't look for the things I disagree with on them and then fight that. I I share or I post the things I agree with on them. Um, a lot of times I'll post a quote, whether it's from a right wing guy or a left wing guy, and someone will reply, "Oh, that guy is horrible. He wants this or he believes in that." And I'm like, my standard reply is I only endorse what I quote. I'm not endorsing every single thing this guy has ever said, written, or done. And I have no problem agreeing with somebody on one issue and disagreeing with them on another. I've mentioned before, I think on Twitter probably. When I was younger, I had a subscription to The Nation and to the National Review for 1 year. And now,
Hmm.
back then, the National Review was a very right wing, conservative, neocon publication, and the Nation was one of the nation's oldest, liberal, democratic magazines. And as I said with each one, I agreed with one third completely, like both
Hmm.
the Nation and the National Review. And then another third, I was like, well, I see your point, but no, I don't agree. And that's with both of them, left and right. And then with the remaining third, it was like I thought it was nuts, I say batshit crazy. So I don't think most people do that. They follow. I follow guys like Matt Stoller. I follow David Sirota. I follow Mark Ames. These would all be considered left people, I think.
Hmm.
But that doesn't bother me because I agree with them on a lot of things, and they seem to agree with me on some things, and I'm sure they disagree with me on other things, and that's fine. And um, so that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Is I think a lot of people, their Twitter feed or their viewing is 100% all like right wing or all left wing.
Hmm.
Or a gold fan might be just listening to nothing but, gold, pro gold, podcasts and stuff, which there's those. Or so people tend to seek reassurance. And I'm secure enough that I don't mind disagreeing. I don't mind listening to stuff that I really think is bullshit. Although I'll tell you, if I really, if as long as I agree with some of it, okay.
Hmm.
If there's something, it's just complete. Sometimes someone can just say one thing, and I'm like, why am I listening to this guy? It's that. But I've tried to be fair. But normally I just listen to people who I know have been right in the past. I'm big on, like I said, my pin tweet, civil liberties,
Hmm.
uh, war. I'm very anti-war because I think most war is just profiteering. At the expense of innocent lives, and I'm against our monetary policy because it's driving people to extremism with its wealth inequality exploding policies. And so that's really bothers me, and that has not changed. I mean, Powell went insane during COVID and to save the hedge funds. I mean, I'm not the only one that said that. A lot of people were saying that, and to save people like Larry Fink and BlackRock
Hmm.
and PIMCO, where they all go to work. And then he did raise rates because inflation was hitting 9%. But meanwhile, he's buying MBS as Case-Shiller house prices are 20% up every year. So they were a huge part of the explosion in house prices was the Fed. Then he went to 5%, which is normalized. We finally, after all those years, had normalized to 5%. 5% rates are normal. Um, and everybody thought the world would end, and the world didn't end. And now they're calling, with record stock highs and supposedly a 4% unemployment rate, that we're going to cut rates. Well, all that's going to do is just, enrich the same people who get enriched every time they do this goofy monetary policy. They already started up QE again. They don't call it QE, but we'll look at the Fed balance sheet. It's growing,
Hmm.
every day they buy, and they don't just buy bills, like they said, their explanation. They're buying bonds and they're buying notes. And so that is monetization. They are doing yield curve control right now, which was, I think, my last Substack post. Um, and no less a luminary than David Dredge agreed with me. He's one of my favorite guys, great guy. Um, he understands the scam from a professional level. Um, Another guy I was going to mention earlier about trust, when we're talking about trust, who has a
Mhm.
lot of good comments on this, is Anthony Deeden, Deden. And he is an investor in Europe. And Grant Williams is how I learned about him. And he is probably the most level-headed financial guy around. And he's certainly out of step with today's, AI mania and all that, just like guys were back in the dot-com bubble, the guys that didn't go insane. So Tony Dayton is not insane. And he's got, if you ever get a chance to listen to his interviews, you could search my Twitter feed for Deeden, and because I have some interviews with him and I have some great quotes from him. But he talks a
Mhm.
lot about trust. He goes, I don't, when you're young, you want to trust the government, you want to trust the data, you want to, and he goes, but now as you get older, you realize they lie. They make things up. I mean, the CPI is a lie. It's a joke. People treat it as if it's gospel. It's an understated model designed to keep government costs down,
Mhm.
lower than they would otherwise be. Um, and I've tried to show many, many examples of that over the years. And some people just don't want to know or don't want to hear it, or they're, you know, they, as Upton Sinclair quote, it's hard to get a man to understand something when his livelihood depends on him not understanding it. So, yeah, oh, Upton Sinclair, yeah, he's got some great quotes about the Fed also. But anyway, I just wanted to put in a plug for Tony Deeden, great thinker. There's an interview out there I posted. Maybe I'll repost it after this. That's just sober ways to think about investing, and I think he's one of the best advocates of that. And like I said, it most people will think he has three heads, when they listen to him, because they'll be like, well, this is different. We've got, we don't care about value or price anymore. It's all price insensitive investing now, the passive.
Think, if I'm not mistaken, Rudy, and you can correct me on this. I think I found him on Substack, so I will link to him.
Does he? I didn't even know that. Yeah, I
If
got to tell
it's
people.
Yeah, if it's the guy
Yeah.
that I'm looking at, Tony Deeden, chairman of Edelweiss,
Yes, that's
and
him. That's
yeah,
him.
in that case, he has a Substack called TQI Capital. So I'll make sure I include that link in the post
Yeah,
so that people
wonderful. I
can
was
find
not
him.
aware of that. I'll just tell people, anybody listening, I get so many emails and I get so many posts, and it's entirely possible that somebody sent me that or something and I just forgot about it. I mean, it's really hard. It's like information overload a lot of times for me, not only because I seek out a lot of information, but also people send me a bunch of stuff, which I appreciate and I do get value out of that. But sometimes it's like a fire hose, and I just can't. I just got to walk away. I can't, and I don't want to be rude to the people that send me this stuff that they think is very important, and oftentimes it is. And I do use some of that stuff sometimes, but I can't. I do miss things. I forget things. I overlook things, and if I've done that to anybody out there, I apologize. I don't mean to, but it's just the way it is. It's too much.
Well, apologies mine if I've just put you in the proverbial there, but I will link to Tony Deeden nonetheless.
No, you're great. Yeah, you're easy to talk to. You're very, very nice person. It seems very pleasant. And actually, most of the guy honestly, I'd love to go on a show with someone who was more confrontational maybe, or someone who was more disagreed with me on things, because I don't mind that either. But I guess the pro Powell, the pro Fed podcasts really, I'm probably off their radar, or they blocked me years ago, I imagine. So, but that's okay. It's great having pleasant conversations. I love talking about stuff like, music, or, one of these days I'd like to have do like a high strangeness, or, because I'm really into like odd. I have a whole thread that's all on just odd stuff, like, UFOs and cattle mutilations and all that fun stuff. And so that's just another interest. And I always tell people, don't worry, I just like weird things, um, which I do. If you've ever seen my Twitter feed, and I like to make people laugh. I like humor. Um, just started watching the Trevor Moore show, Whitest Kids You Know. I'd never seen that, so I'm cracking up at some of that. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
No, I
Yeah,
haven't,
and
no.
it's like all good comedy, like Monty Python years ago, or Kids in the Hall.
Oh,
It's it's just a bunch of skits, and some of them are like, oh, this is cringe, or this is terrible. But then they'll have one that you're just rolling, just dying. I mean, Monty Python used to be like that for me. I was watching that when I was a little kid, and I really love a lot of that type of humor. And so Trevor Moore, rest in peace, he seemed to have that too. And I remember watching the very first Saturday Night Live, back in I think 76 maybe, so 75, I don't know,
Mhm.
on TV, and it was great. But then, once they got so when Trump got elected, it kind of ruined comedy for everybody, because I think they showed like, all these late night hosts, 98% of their jokes were about Trump. And
Mhm.
there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing Trump jokes. I mean, God knows there's plenty to joke about, but every single joke, didn't have to be a Trump joke. And I pointed that out at the time. It just, so I think it ruined comedy. I used to watch Jon Stewart in his first iteration, not his comeback, but, and he was 90%, anti Republican, which was fine, and 10% pro Democrat. But he would at least John would on occasion just go off on the other side, on the Democrats,
Mhm.
and rip them a good one. Um, but then once he left, I mean, I haven't watched any of those. I mean, other than watch them once or twice and then go, this is, life's too short, turn it off. Um, or Saturday Night Live, gave up on that many years ago. But back in the day, a guy like Phil Hartman. I mean, that guy had me roll. That guy was great. I don't know, it's probably before your time, but uh, just They had some great people on there and some great comedies. So people can't, you can't. Charlie Munger who made a line in a USC graduation speech years ago. He said, "It's very important not to get lost in extreme ideology."
Okay.
and and because it cabbages the mind is the way he put it. And I totally agree. Don't ever go full, the old joke, don't go full this or that. Don't
Mhm.
go full Democrat. Don't go full Republican. Don't identify yourself with a red or blue or with a candidate. Stop looking for political saviors, as Whitney Webb says. Trump is not your savior. He's not the country's savior. I mean, a lot of people think he is still, but he's not. And Biden wasn't either, and Harris isn't either. I don't know where the next good politician is going to come from. But especially in Trump 2.0, man. As I was telling someone the other day, I never liked Trump. I thought he was too authoritarian. In 2015, I had a post I reposted the other day where he's talking about shutting down the internet and making fun of free speech. He says, "Oh, free speech people, they're silly people," and of course we've seen him trash the Second Amendment lately.
Mhm.
But the people who opposed Trump, the Hillary Clintons and the Podestas and of course 99% of the media were so horrific. For me, Trump in 2016 was a symptom, not a cause. The cause was the previous 20 years of Bush and Obama policies, which I thought were horrible. And I think a lot of Democrats, like Matt Stoller is pointing this out, are realizing now what a horrible president Obama was. Um, but then now Trump is just so, well, first of all, I've talked about this before, so divisive and so demonizing his enemies, which I hate, demonizing the other party. Democrats are traitors. I mean, I may disagree with the Democrats on a lot of things, but I'm not calling them traitors. Come on, what is that? And he calls his
Mhm.
own party, like, Tom Massey is a traitor, probably the only guy worth a damn left in Congress. And so Trump is just gone fully off the rails in the second administration. I mean, he's a warmonger. He's covering up for massive crime network
Mhm.
that he was probably involved in. Um, it's just you just shake your head. A lot of people thought, because in 2015 Trump was talking about ending the wars and he was bashing Wall Street. And then, well, you learned right away in Trump 1.0, he puts Goldman Sachs in charge of his administration, to replace Citigroup, which picked Obama's cabinet. So I don't, there's one party, and it's not representing me. And I don't think it's representing most Americans. Um, so we need somebody to come along. Of course, I don't know who it's going to be. It costs $1 billion probably to run for president. So you're going to be a little bit compromised. I imagine you're going to have to owe people things. And then I get the people, texting me, "Oh, you can't vote your way out of this." And I'm like, "Oh, what are you going to do? You're going to, I mean, you know, back then it was musket versus musket. Okay. Now it's like,
Mhm.
uh, musket versus, attack helicopter or something. I mean, it's good. Come on, guys. And the people calling for civil war and all that nonsense. Most Americans left and right don't hate each other. I mean, at least if they shouldn't, they should think about it. It's not their neighbor that's the problem. It's
Mhm.
this government. And if you think that there's a lot of light between Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell, you have not been paying attention. It's not D versus R. It's them versus us, and them being the top people that are gonna that are sucking all the wealth up. And I know I sound like a crazy socialist here. I consider myself to be a very conservative person. And I mean, I voted for Ron Paul most of the last, my lifetime. Uh, I don't consider myself left wing, but people say, "Oh, why are young people so into socialism?" They think it's a good idea, and I think socialism, well, anyway, I don't think it's a good idea. But and so, well, maybe people are into socialism because they think capitalism was like bailing out Lloyd Blankfein in 2008. You know, he had a failing hedge fund, Goldman Sachs, and then they magically decided to make it a, taxpayer-backed bank that doesn't deal with the public. So and of course, half the Fed, a lot of the Fed officials go work at Goldman Sachs, or they came from Goldman Sachs. So it's such an incestuous private bank cartel. Um, and it's doing a lot of damage. And anyway, I just try and make people aware of that. And some people care and some people don't.
Well, I think that's a fantastic place to wrap up. I think we've covered so much there. I just want to thank everyone for sending in your questions. And if I didn't get your question read out, I do apologize for that. And Rudy, of course, thank you for taking your time and the willingness of just having sort of an open Q&A session. So I really appreciate
Sure.
that. As
Yeah. Well, now I get to go back to Fed Day, so I can make fun of the Fed today, which has their big decision, which apparently is 97% or 98% going to be no change today. So you heard it here first.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say that actually. We are recording before a Fed decision, which is likely to be the same. And I do highly recommend. I've been looking through your X this morning. I've had a chuckle, to be fair, at some of the things you've put on there. That being said, Rudy, I always like to give people the opportunity to say how you can be found. So if people want to find out more about you, connect with your work, how do they do that?
Well, you can go to my Twitter account, which is Rudy Havenstein, on Twitter. I don't call it X. And it's a mixture of I don't know, serious stuff and non-serious stuff. And then the Substack is rudy.substack.com. And it's all free and worth every penny, as I like to say.
Absolutely, I totally agree. I enjoy receiving the emails and having a good read through. And I will also find Tony Deeden. I think I pronounced that properly. I'll link to
Yeah,
his
I'll
in
look that
there on
up.
behalf of yourself.
I probably heard about it and then forgot about it, like I said, with the overflow of information. But he's a good thinker, especially on the trust issue. I've got some great quotes on him. I'll probably retweet after this.
Perfect. Well, Rudy, again, a massive thank you. Next time, I look forward to, yeah, we'll probably talk markets, commodities. Now, I'll make sure I provide a bit more pushback next time, but I look
Ne
forward to catching up with you
no,
later on
you're
in the year.
you're fine. Next time we'll talk about the meaning of life, and we'll solve all the world's problems. So I'll try and come better prepared for that.
Well, in that case, for everyone listening, stay tuned, subscribe if you haven't done so
Yeah, it's
already,
all going
because
to be
we're
laid
going
out, all the solution, the meaning of everything. Yep.
really,
And what to buy, what stocks to buy, and what to sell. And also,
oh,
we'll talk about what religion is the best too. We'll solve that. Yeah.
if that doesn't get people subscribing, I don't know what does. But really, thanks
Yeah,
again for your time and get
sure.
back to enjoying Fed Day.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Take care.
Cheers. Bye bye.